Welcome back everybody to another episode, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about pretty much my 5 tips for fishing the Mississippi River, so stay tuned. Alright guys, so lately I've been getting a lot of questions on Instagram and Facebook about fishing the Mississippi River. Pretty much what am I looking for, how do I go about dissecting the Mississippi River. You know, the Mississippi River is broken down into different pools. I mainly fish on pools like 7, 8, I fished on 9 a little bit this year, 5, 5A, 6. I mean, just all the upper Mississippi River pools. I pretty much fish on throughout the summertime, and there's a lot of different things that I look for when I'm on the river, depending on you know, what the river is doing. The river can change drastically day by day, and especially week by week. So I figured I would break out my 5 tips, like my top 5 things that I'm looking for that I know are gonna put me in an area for some high percentage chances of catching some decent sized fish. Just before we jump into this video, guys, if you guys have not subscribed to the channel, do that now. At 5,000 subscribers, we are doing a rod and reel giveaway, and we are getting there fast. We are almost at 3,000 subs, but like I said, 5,000 subscribers. Doing a rod and reel giveaway. While you guys are subscribing to the channel, hit the little bell notification next to the subscribe button, and then you guys will never miss when I upload a video. I upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so if you guys don't want to miss out on those uploads, hit that little bell notification. Alright guys, so let's get into tip number 1. Now my number 1 tip, and I'm just going to say this right away because I think it's the easiest thing to look for when you're on the Mississippi River, and that's going to be any sort of riprap shoreline. So if you're getting up on an area that's got good rock, good riprap, decent flowing water by it, especially right off of the main channel, or rocky points, any sort of riprap point. There's a lot of man-made islands out on the Mississippi, and those riprap points or riprap shorelines, you can basically go up or down them or fish the points on them, especially if there's a good drop off near them. Those generally will hold some fish on them. So riprap shorelines, you can't go wrong with it. Throwing a square bill around it, you know, spinner bait, swim jig, even flipping in a heavier Texas rig on those. You can definitely always find some fish in those areas. That brings me to tip number 2. One of my favorite things to look for, guys, is mud lines, okay? The Mississippi River, especially this year, we've been getting a lot of rain. And it just seems like every time I'm out on the Mississippi, you're gonna find a mud line. And what I mean by a mud line is that you're gonna have a clear transition between like dirty water and clean water. Like it's gonna be like they're just gonna meet. And you're gonna see this like a line of just cloudy, muddy, murky water going through here, and then on this side of the line, you're just gonna see nice, clean water. Usually, you find those mud lines next to where there's going to be like reeds or any sort of vegetation will create a good mud line. That water kind of comes through, and all that dirt and muck kind of sifts through all that stuff, and it doesn't get through it all, and then it just clears right up for you. One of my prime examples is we were out on pool 5A. We found a really good mud line, super clean, crystal clear water, and that's where we ended up catching all of our fish for that tournament. So finding mud lines is a really huge deal, especially with a decent amount of flowing water coming through them. You can always end up finding fish on those mud lines. Now for tip number 3, this one's gonna be like a back eddy, or just an eddy off of some good flowing water here. Now this is a perfect example of how we caught them in this last tournament really well. We found a good spot where you just have a good slough that's like got good flowing water coming through it, like a bigger slough where there's a lot of water running through it. And off of those sloughs, usually they're pretty deep, especially the ones that have really good flowing water coming through them. Usually they're like 15 to 20 feet deep, sometimes 30 feet deep in some spots. And what those will do is eventually you'll have like a little bit of a cut in the shoreline, and it creates like a back eddy where this water kind of washes back up, and it's like nice calm water, but it's good to shallow cover, and it also has deep water right next to it. Those back eddies can be really killer and essential for you catching a good bag of fish. Like I said, in this last tournament we had a really good back eddy that we were on. We ended up catching quite a few fish out of there, and we pulled out like 2 or 3 keepers out of that specific area. But like I said, those good back eddies, you know, it throws a lot of those bait fish that are in there too. There's a lot of bait fish in those areas where that slough's pouring through, and it kind of pushes them pushes those bait fish into those back eddies, and those bass just set up and ambush all that bait fish. That tournament morning we were there, right when we got there in the morning, those bass were busting on shad in that area. I mean, just everywhere. The whole entire time we were there, there was just bass just jumping, chasing shad. You could see the shad and bait fish just swimming. They were just getting busted on by those bass. You know, that's just a good high percentage area, especially when, like I said, that slough's coming through. It's pushing those bait fish into that back eddy where those bass are already set up. And there's also deep water there, you know, where if they want to go a little deeper, they can. So it's just got everything essential to holding fish. So this next one it's kind of a difficult one to explain, but it's gonna be, you want to look for flowing water coming through a slough, but it's basically fishing grassy points. Now, one of my favorite ways to catch bass on the Mississippi is throwing a frog. Everybody loves throwing a frog on the Mississippi River. I absolutely love a good frog bite. And one of the best ways to get a good frog bite going is especially duckweed. If you can find good duckweed, okay? Now, how this relates to grassy points. Now, if you got a slough that kind of comes through and on both sides of like a grassy island, it'll kind of come down to a point. And that point will have a lot of vegetation on it, especially duckweed. But there's good flowing water coming nearby. That's one of the huge things on the Mississippi River is you would think that, you know, especially largemouth bass, that they don't care for high current water, but anything with a decent amount of flow, it doesn't have to be a lot of flow, but a little bit of flow coming through is pretty essential to catching fish. But what I like to look for is those grassy points where you have a decent amount of flow coming, so it's gonna push those largemouth into that grass, and then throwing those grassy points, especially in duckweed, for catching big fish. I absolutely love throwing a frog on the Mississippi, and it's one of the best ways to catch them, or just locate them. If you're kind of pitching around those grassy points, I mean, especially in the back sloughs on any of the pools on the Mississippi, there's always floating like reeds and points, grassy points that you can throw a frog on. And if you start locating fish, they're biting, but they're not getting the frog all the way, you can throw in there with the Texas rig and generally pull out all those fish. Like I said, grassy points, guys. Go in the backwaters, find some sloughs that kind of connect to each other, make some grassy points, and start fishing that. By the way, guys, if you guys have not seen any of my previous videos and some of this you're trying to think of like what you're looking for, go ahead, check out my bass fishing tournament videos on the Mississippi. You'll see a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is a lot of the stuff we're fishing. So now for my last and final tip for fishing the Mississippi. This is kind of an old school way here, guys, is just fishing cut banks. If you don't know what a cut bank is, it's basically like a good steep, really steep bank. And on that steep bank, the water comes up on it. So a lot of these times you'll have like overhanging reeds, things like that that kind of sit over this cut bank, and you can kind of see them overhanging, you know, on the river. And what I like to do is I like to go against the current and flip up into there with like a 1/2 ounce Texas rig, flip up into these cut banks, and those fish will sit under those reeds into that cut bank, and they'll just sit there and wait to ambush any like bait fish that get pushed in there from the flowing current in the slough there. Cut banks are just a really good old school way to catch fish on the Mississippi. I guarantee you, if you're out on the river, you're going to see a lot of people fishing cut banks. I mean, there's guys that'll just go to these cut banks and they'll just flip a cut bank for hours on end trying to catch fish. Fishing cut banks is a super effective way. In the last tournament, we got pulled up into a cut bank. Very first flip I did into this area with a 10-inch worm, bam, got nailed, caught a 3.5 pounder out of there, threw him in the boat. The live well was a really clutch fish for us. But like I said, cut banks, you guys, you can never go wrong with fishing a cut bank. It's gonna hold fish somewhere along the shoreline. You're gonna catch fish there. Now for a little bit of bonus tips, guys, here on fishing the Mississippi. Like I said before in a little previous comment, always looking for flowing water. If I could give you guys any big tip, it would be look for some flowing water coming down the shoreline where you can find, like I said, with the basically my 5 tips there. You can find a back eddy, okay, a mud line, a cut bank, like I said, those points that kind of hold fish off of that water coming down. Another thing, anytime where you have like where 2 sloughs kind of meet together, so you got a slough here and a slough here, and it's coming around this island, wherever those two sloughs meet is going to be a pretty productive area for fish. It's just going to push a lot of fish into that point, especially if it has a back eddy coming off of it or it's good vegetation coming off of it. Those sloughs, when they meet, is going to be a really high percentage area for fish to hold on. Another little bonus tip for you guys, and I kind of said it before, was duckweed. If you can find an area that's got a lot of duckweed in it with decent flowing water nearby, duckweed is just huge, especially this year. I've caught a lot of fish out of duckweed. Not super thick duckweed. Sometimes you get into that really thick duckweed where your frog is barely making marks in it. You want to find that thin layer of duckweed where your frog really cuts through that duckweed really well. Fish, bass on the Mississippi, it just seems like that thinner duckweed, they tend to sit in more. Thinner duckweed, you'll definitely get bit out of those. And one last bonus tip before we sign off of this video, guys, is you can never fish thick enough, okay? There has been times where I've trolled into some spots I probably, you wouldn't normally troll your boat into. I've gotten into the thick of thick, guys. Water's just barely getting in there. There's like a foot or two of water up in the reeds, but there's duckweed or there's good vegetation back there. Throw a frog back there, especially in this last tournament video. We were pulled up into the spot, we flipped the outer edge of it, and I could see some duckweed back there, and I was like, man, I gotta try this out. So I nosed the front of the boat into there, I threw back in there, boom, pulled a fish out. He wasn't a keeper, but bass do hold in that really, really shallow water in the thick of thick. So I don't think you can fish too thick on the Mississippi, especially on the river. Bass just tend to hang shallow, guys. So you can never fish too shallow. Alright guys, so I hope I covered a decent chunk of things for fishing the Mississippi. Like I said, got a lot of comments asking me what I'm looking for when I'm out there, and I figured I would do this video to cover those things. So I hope I covered everything. If there's a question you guys have, throw it down in the comments below. If I can't answer it, I will find somebody else who can, or somebody who's watching this video can also comment down below what their favorite fishing tips are for fishing a river system in general. Okay, let's share the knowledge in the comments section. But like I said, if you have any questions, drop them down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like and subscribe. 5,000 subs, we're doing that giveaway, so subscribe to the channel. And like I always say, keep fishing hard.